one.
So, Mr. Jones, I'm going to ask you about. I would love to hear about you growing up. So,
Growing up,
your family, and are you from this area originally?
Yeah.
Which one you want?
See, that's more modern there.
There you go.
That's pretty cool, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
1941.
Oh, my gosh.
That's the one I wear all the time.
Yeah.
That's right. Cherry coke.
People say, "What's that, man?"
Water of speaking.
Oh, that's perfect. That's all I need.
100-year-old guy doesn't buy water.
That's good with me. No problem. So, Mr. Jones, are you from Pendleton? Are you from this area?
Yeah, I'm out from Easley at Dacresville.
Oh, Dacresville.
You ever heard of Dacresville?
I have. Yes, sir.
Yeah, a lot of people came from Dacresville. Back then, there's a Jones that lived at Punkintown. I think he had 8 boys, and I'm down for one of those.
Okay.
Somewhere, or not.
What was it like growing up in the Depression?
Well, nobody had the money.
Yeah.
All I can remember about the Depression, about when I was about 7 years old. I was born in 23, along 30. That's when they had the crash. And I can remember my dad on the telephone talking to the bank. The one in Easley, I think, held up. Didn't go down, but most of the banks went broke. And later, my dad bought some land for 17 cents an acre. That we later bought him land. It was left over from a big farm. They sold off the good part, and he bought what was left. It was all grown up in willows and all. And we go back and cut the willows and wash it and clean it up, and end up planting corn and stuff like that in the next to the creek bottoms. We did that. And people didn't have any money. On the farm, people would, like, you had tenants, we had tenants, and they'd be like, grow cotton. Everybody grew cotton. Cotton was growing around here at Clemson too. Cotton everywhere. Everybody depended on cotton. And you could make about a little, most of them make a little less than a bale per acre. A bale is like 500 pounds. It got down to like 5 cents a pound. So a bale wouldn't bring but $25. And they couldn't make but 4 or 5 bales, so they didn't have about $200 a year to spend. Something like that. My dad was a rural mail carrier, also farm. Sometimes people would put free eggs in the thing for money, for stamp. Eggs would be like 10 cents a dozen. Another time, he'd come in with some geese. He'd sell the geese to pay for their postage. Another time he brought some turkeys. We ended up with the turkeys because he did it. And things were that cheap. And like a guy would work all day for $1. They'd plow a mule from morning to night for $1. Some farmers wouldn't pay them but 65 cents. They'd plow all day for 65 cents. That's the way it was in the Depression. And of course, the war came along then, and Franklin Roosevelt then established all these programs, WPA and like
the
parks
CCC.
now.
Yep.
I was there when they built a mountain park up at Stable Rock. My dad carried us up there, and we had the people in uniform. They salute the flag and put it down at night. They lived in tents and worked and built the parks all over the United States. So they had all these programs. They had one called Farmers Home Administration. They'd take and give a man a mule and a plow and find him a farm and try to get him to start farming. They had the Farmers Ministry. They had the Production Credit Association set up with Roosevelt. Set up so they could borrow money different. So they had a bunch of them. People talk about it now like it was bad, but that's what started things around. So then the war came along in 1938 and 39. They was talking about war. And I can remember my dad said that Roosevelt's trying to get us in the war. because we were 3 boys. Well, I went to Clemson when I was about 16. I was just turned 17 or something other. And of course, ROTC, probably the first good clothes I had. And we wore those clothes, we were right proud of them. And so during my sophomore year, we were in a room like on Sunday. And we had a radio. Our room with a guy named Ben Thrillkill from Lawrence. And we heard over the radio that they attacked Pearl Harbor. Well, a lot of the guys got out on the field marching around like they're ready to fight. Not me. We stayed in the room. Of course, we went home, and a lot of the boys, we'd already signed up for the draft. When I was 18, you had to sign up for the draft. And some of the boys wanted to get into different things, so they'd volunteer. Well, they came out with a program called Enlisted Reserve Corps, which means we signed up with it. We could stay. They wanted us to stay in school as long as we could. So most of my class signed up in Enlisted Reserve Corps. So we went through to junior year. End of the junior year, I got home in June. My birthday was June the 13th. I got a letter to report to Fort Jackson on the 14th, on Monday. A whole class had to report to Fort Jackson at the same time. Because so we have 3 years ROTC. I was a first sergeant on a company and different things. But all of us reported, about 200 of us. People talk about going in. My brother was going to Johnston to carry his wife. She was from Johnston to visit. I packed my little bag just like I used to bum around. We used to bum everywhere we went. I packed my little bag, rode with him to Saluda. I got out and got on the road, and my thumb and bum caught a ride to Columbia. To the capital. Got out there and it said there was a sign that said Fort Jackson. Got on a bus and went out to the center. When we got out there, there was about 200 of our class. We stayed there about 8 days in training, and they would have call for truck drivers one morning, who I could drive a truck. I never volunteered for anything. A lot of them held up their hand. I gave them wheelbars to haul coal back and forth to the various furnace. Well, the boys were smart. They got their names, and they gave them the wrong name. So they'd be on the telephone, on the loudspeaker, yelling for some man's name, because they just parked a wheelbarrow somewhere and walked away from it. And they'd have a little corporal been in about 6 months, marching us around. See, we'd be about a column of threes. We'd be about from here way up yonder. And they call for the cadence, and we'd say 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we'd add in CLMSON. And the little corporal, he'd run up to the front and try to shut them up, and then the backside, they'd start doing the same thing. So we'd had more training than he had, because most of them had been in the Army for 3 years.
So it was all Clemson guys,
Yeah,
all
Clemson,
200.
all Clemson,
and I'm assuming you had some friends in that group?
The whole class.
Yeah.
Well, finally, we stayed there about 8 days, and I know they told us we weren't supposed to ride transportation. They gave us a weekend pass. I usually would bum home most every weekend. I had a stepmom at the time, and she said, we better go see Joe. They may get shipped out, and we won't see him. He said, well, he comes home about every weekend. He'll probably be home. Well, 2 of us, they told us we couldn't ride transportation. So we got in the Columbian bum and caught a ride on a truck, flatbed truck. We sat on the flatbed truck and rode all the way to Greenville. Got out in a bum across Greenville and caught a ride out to Dacresville. I got there, nobody was at home. So I was sitting there in a chair reading the Greenville News. My dad and them had been to Easley to get some groceries on Saturday night. So he walked in and he said, I told you he'd be home. So I stayed till Sunday. I had to go back. So they carried me to the bus station. I violated the law. They said we weren't supposed to ride. See, all the buses would be full, people laying in the counter going across the country. So I rode the bus back to Columbia and got back okay. Well, we stayed there a while. Finally, they divided us up. About 30 or 35 of us, they sent us up to Camp Croft in Spartanburg. Some went to Texas, some went this way, and some went that way. But about close to 35 or 40 of us went over Spartanburg to Camp Croft. Well, we had to go through basic training. Back then, if you finished your junior year, you went to camp for about 6 weeks. You came back and you finished your senior year, then you're a second lieutenant. They made us go through basic training for about 17 weeks at Camp Croft. And then we're supposed to go to Fort Benning for training. Well, they brought us back to Clemson under what they call ASTB, Army Student Training Program. So we came back to Clemson for a while. And they put us classes. I took analytics and another course and got credit for it. When December came, or early January, they gave us early exams. They picked out 40 of us first to go to school in Fort Benning, Officer Candidate School. And I was one of the first 40. So they put us on a train and sent us down there to Fort Benning, OCS. So they went through everything. We have training in reading maps and all that kind of stuff. It also, one day you might be a corporal, next day you might be a company commander, next day you might be a battalion commander. And they had a guy that went with you all the time in a platoon, and he rated you. We call him the TO. He checking everybody. Well, a lot of the boys hadn't had the experience that some of us had had. And I had a buddy next to me who was from Montana, and I liked. They interview you, certain ones at times. They interviewed him, and when we got back to camp, he's rolled up and gone. You never see him again. So he got break out. Another thing you did at camp, you had to rate everybody in your camp, and you included where you fit in, who you thought was the best soldier, who was second best, and they had all these characteristics that you had to check out. And I know the guy interviewed me. They said, well, so-and-so had him high. Some of them think they put themselves high thinking that'd help them. Well, they get kicked out because most people rate them lower. And about downstairs, they kicked out about a third of our. Upstairs, they cut throats. They about all got kicked out. Out of about 30-something, only 17 of us made second lieutenants.
Wow.
The rest of them got kicked out and went as replacements. Well, we stayed there 17 weeks, and D-Day was on June 6th. On June the 13th, I was named a second lieutenant on that day. I was just turned 21, and they made me a second lieutenant. Well, then they give you a choice of what you might put in. I put it in for motor pool because I wanted to ride. But I didn't get motor pool. They sent me to the 71st Division, which was stationed at Fort Benning at the time. It had been out in Colorado. It was a mule division. They had trained, everything was pulled by mules and whatnot. But they decided to change it back to a regular division. So they brought it to Fort Benning. And we were still open, and occasionally they would call for replacements. And I think we second lieutenants had to serve about 6 months as second lieutenants, or 3 months before they could send us overseas. So I was protected. But like Battalion S3 was a captain. We had I believe a Clemson man was a major. The S3 got called to send overseas, and I was a second lieutenant. He called me, made me come up there as a S3, as a second lieutenant, and I made out the schedule for the whole battalion, and I was telling the company commanders what to do by order of the battalion commander, if you understand that.
Yeah.
And whatnot. I did that a while, and they sent me back to the company because they got me a replacement. I trained a captain to take my place. So I went back to the company, stayed a while. He got shot overseas. I went back up to the battalion again for a while. My job, we'd have to line up trucks to go out to the rifle range and all that kind of stuff as a second lieutenant. But I had a weapons platoon. I had 3 mortars and 2 light machine guns under my control. Well, they came up finally up in December. D-Day was on June 6th. This was on up in January. We were packing up to go overseas. I was a packing officer battalion. I got a trunk downstairs that's TAT, to accompany troops. The trunk went with me overseas and came back with me. It's downstairs. So they moved. So they put us on a train and sent us to New Jersey, Fort Gilmer. The snow was about this deep. We had, the men were down here. We had John Eisenhower. He was in my company. When I was at Fort Benning, I was on officer duty for the weekend. All second lieutenants got all the weekend duties. He reported in. He had been to see his daddy after when they finished in West Point, and they'd already had jumped the thing. He stayed about 2 weeks and he came back and he was assigned to 71st Division. He came down and I carried him to BOQ, Barracks Officers Quarters, and got him resolved. So we worked with him for about 6 months. So in January they put us on that train and he went with us. So we at Camp Kilmer and we all roomed together with him. We'd kid him all the time because we'd have to go down at one of us and spend the night with the men in the upper room down there. And he didn't think that was necessary because he thought sergeants ought to do it. So we kidded him a lot about it and whatnot. Well, after that, they put us on in fact, I got a pass to go in. I had a friend as a captain, and he was a Boy Scout leader in New Hampshire. He was a Catholic. So we went into New York with him, and his sister worked at a hospital up there. We went to Sony Handy. I went to Radio Music Hall with her and this thing. Got on a train, went up to Connecticut. And they put us in a room, gave me a bed. He's a Catholic. He got up the next morning, went to mass, and they brought me in the newspaper, and we rolled us up. Then they brought us They brought us meals, and they had a family room. His family came in and ate with us, and I met them. And after we ate a plenty of ice cream. He brought ice skates. We went out to a pond. He ice skated. I put him on. I never did fall, but I got behind him and held around, went around the pond one time, came back, and I haven't been on skates since. I've been first and last time. Well, we came back. Then they put us on a train to go to New Jersey. One night we got on a plane. Well, we got on a ferry and went over to our ship. Well, some of the people got sick already. So they put us on a ship. And most of my men, we were down in the hold, right in the bow of the boat. But we officers had a cabin upstairs that is a converted liner. A bunch of us had double-deck rooms. And I had the bottom deck and one over me. And right beside me is a ducker. There's a guy from like Texas, a tall, thin guy. He got sick and stayed in that bed for 12 days. Never did get out. He was sick. And we'd bring him orange juice and stuff like that. Well, one day, come my duty, I had to go down in the bow of the boat to stay with the guys at night. You could write letters, and they had a little light I could read. Well, they would stick 3 or 4 high. 3/4 of them was sick. They were vomiting over the side in the helmet and missing it. It was stinky. And the ship, when you see a swell come along and as big as this house, that boat would go up like that. Yeah. Well, about 7 o'clock, my cookies got right here. So I told the sergeant I was going to go upstairs and get to my bunk. So I deserted duty and went upstairs and got down like that and finally got to the room and got me some orange juice and got over it. If you owned a ship, you could get out on the outside and get the air. You could see it and it worked okay. But down in the bow of the boat where you could do it, they were all sick and stinking and nasty. And if you took a shower in salt water, you shaved in salt water and whatnot. So you pulled it off. And so we had about 40 or 50 ships in the convoy. They put the troop ships in the middle, then supply ships around us. Then you had little destroyers all out behind. You could see ships as far as you could see out there in front. And these swells would come along like this, and if you had they supplied a submarine, they'd throw blast off the bottom, and we'd have to go to duty, whatnot. So we on a ship 12 days in convoy. We pulled into Southampton, and there was ships up and down. You could walk ships everywhere. You never see that. We stayed there during the day. When night came, we crossed the channel to Le Havre. When we got out in the channel at Le Havre, they sent a boat out to get Eisenhower. They decided it'd be safe if he got captured. They'd hold it against Eisenhower. So they carried him, and he went on one of the staffs for a while. So he bid us goodbye. So he left us. From there, they put us on trucks, went to a place called Camp Ogo. The reception centers were a bunch of camps along the coast, named after cigarettes. Camp Ogo, Camp Camel, Camp Lucky Strike, and that kind of stuff. We had Camp O. They lined up tents out in a plowed field, mud about this deep in water, and Army always lines things up. There's about 4 officers in a tent here. We had a little coal thing you could light some car at night. Well, we trained there, double teamed, and went to movies and all that kind of stuff, getting ready to go up front. We stayed there, double time and whatnot. Well, then they decided to move us up to the front. They put us on a train, 40 officers in a car. We was 40 officers in one car. They put some straw in a bucket over here for the toilet. And the men were in different cars, the whole train. Took us about a day and a half. We was in it overnight. We'd have to pull over and let other trains pass by because we weren't going to the front. So we went down around, if you're familiar with it, down Nancy, France, a little place called Beach, B-I-T-C-H-E. They call it Beach.
Yeah.
I found out later it's a resort.
Yep.
But we stayed in some houses there, took over French houses, and stayed there for several days doing a little training. Then decided to move us up to the front. So we got on trucks with cat eyes, followed trucks for about 30 miles, went up to what they call the Vogues Mountain, V-O-G-E-S, Vogues Mountains. The 100th Division had been there all winter. I know a bit more about it now since I've read so many books about the Army and the thing. But they'd been there all winter. So they had a lieutenant to carry my platoon up the mountain. They took the 3 rifle platoons back to guard Corps headquarters and left me to take over a whole company position. And of course, not knowing anything, and of course, a lot of artillery fire at the time. You could smell it in the air and whatnot, just shooting. And he led us up the hill, and they already had holes dug out from, they'd been there all winter. So the command post was a hole about 6 or 8 feet wide, 6 feet deep, covered with logs and dirt. And they had a side place where you could put your bunk over here on the side. So the sergeant and I took over that. They had a telephone already, lines up. We lined up and down the thing. We had a telephone we could call back headquarters. Well, it was kind of moonlight night a little bit. Well, you put out, you have outposts, you know. You put outposts, we put a machine gun out here in one place, in a place, one over here. Well, you have to go check your guns at night. So the sergeant and I, you sleep 2 hours, you're off 4 hours. Well, I had a Sergeant Davis, who's sergeant, big tall guy. All of them were older than I was because they'd been in Panama earlier. Down in Panama, they'd served down there for years. And all these sergeants, my sergeant was like 25 or 6, and I was 21. And all the sergeants, then that one sergeant, he was in 30-something years old, and he's in charge of machine guns. Well, I got up and went around to check them. You had to have a pass, halt, who goes there, and all that kind of stuff. A lot of people get shot the first night because they get nervous. So I got up and went through there and found him, and he was in. Well, in Jackson, he went and checked him. Well, again, I went to check him again. I said, well, he's up all the time. I said, why are you still up? He said, well, these young fellows are scared, and I told them to go ahead and sleep, and I'd stay up. So he was that good fella. So he looked after him. Well, we stayed up there. The next morning, we got out. One plane had been shot down. There's a dead German in a plane out to the way. So we ran. The only thing, they had all kind of sea rations they stored all winter, where you could have a choice of what we wanted, because certain things you didn't like and whatnot. I can't remember how many days we stayed up there, but finally they took us off the mountain. And we got on a truck, because we had 3 regiments, 14th, 5th, and 66th. The 5th and 66th had jumped off and broke through the German lines. They put us on a truck to catch up. Just my platoon, because 3 rifle platoons went to Corps headquarters. So I was back here in the back. I remember going through, and here came a 2.5-ton truck with dead Germans in it, stacked just like cordwood, had killed that day. Not too long after that, here come a truck with Americans stacked in there dead. They just throw them in there like cordwood with a tag on the toe or something other, whatnot. Kind of opened your eyes. Well, we went to a place through Parmasons. The Germans were retreating, so they got broke down. A lot of their equipment was pulled by mules, horses, and sometimes cows and steers. Ours were pulled by trucks, and they couldn't move fast. So they were strung out on like a mile down the road, retreating. Our airplanes caught them and riddled it. And when we went through there were cows and horses with foots up in the air like it's always, and trucks all along the highway, torn all to pieces and whatnot. Well, we moved on up and we got Formation. Then we got to the Rhine River. We dug in at the Rhine River. I had a foxhole there, and nothing much was going on. Well, I was in my foxhole cleaning my little old carbine. A runner came over to me and said the captain wanted to see me. So I put it together. We was always on the voice about shooting their rifle off, and I raised mine up to check the safety, and it went off. So they all saw, yeah, that was me. Anyway, what he wanted me to do, they'd found a wine cellar in Baton Rouge, and they wanted to get wine for the boys. I didn't drink any wine at all then. Well, they gave me a Jeep and a trailer. So I go into Beirut, and they was in a basement, and the artillery was firing on the town, so we sat there a good while, like 30 or 45 minutes, and they loaded my trailer down with wine and champagne. Then when it died down, I carried it back to the company headquarters. And these boys, they passed it out, and of course our company commander, he was a plain alcoholic.
Of course.
Because several times I had to go get him out of bed to get him to come and work at Camp Kilman. He'd drink all the time, drink beer, and he'd drink it, and those boys got to drinking. Well, we're getting ready to cross the Rhine. They loaded us on trucks. I was on a different truck from this Sergeant Davis. He was on one truck. We crossed the Rhine River on a pontoon and got over there in a bunch of buildings. They come up and told me to put him under arrest. He had been got drunk and been shooting off the side road at rabbits, and they had him charged for killing 2 Germans riding a bicycle and injuring 4 more. This guy, and I trusted so much, but he got drunk, didn't he? So I went up to him and he said, "Lieutenant, I don't remember doing anything like that." Well, they told us to put him under arrest. So we put him under arrest. He'd have to stay at the company headquarters. So we went through the rest of the war with him under arrest. We got down into Austria. We gave him his gun back. Nobody ever picked him up. So he finished the war. So I ended up in Steyr, Austria, at a little place, Matzeldorf, Austria, near Steyr. And we ended up there. We stayed about, the war was over, and the day the war was over, the boys were filthy. They'd been climbing around in mud, sleeping in mud, and you slept where you were. If you stopped in the woods, you stopped and slept on the ground. And they were nasty. And the boys took off their pants, was washing them in some pots. And the Army, as usual, makes you clean your rifle on the first thing. So they made us have a rifle inspection. I lined them up in front of this house with no pants on for a rifle inspection. And I got pictures of it. Someone made a picture of it. So we're there, had an inspection. Of course, this story gets much longer. And so they had that. And well, then we trained a little bit around there. We had a parade. We were in the Third Army then. Patton had a parade, and the war was still going over in the Pacific. See, it wasn't over yet. So he told us we were going to the Pacific, and he was going to go with us. He came out, and his aide had an umbrella. It was raining. Get it, GD, off of me. He cussed a little bit. He got up and made a speech and said, I'm going, you guys are going to Japan. Now, he was going to go with us. You're going to take this rifle and stick it up there, and twist it, and raise cane. And he had us sitting out in the rain like a, of course, it didn't stir me up. I didn't want to go. Well, anyway, went on for a while. And of course, the war ended after that. So then we moved up to a place called Oeffingen, a felt factory there. And I was in charge of athletics. Somebody else would be in charge of something else. Well, we had a softball field. We cleared a softball field, had a softball team, and all like that. While I was there, the MPs drove up and wanted to know where our prisoner was. He was out there playing softball. So they took him general court martial. And I went and spoke for him on behalf of himself. And of course, he said he couldn't remember doing all that. They took his stripes and locked him up in a POW cage there. After 2 or 3 weeks, I went over to speak to him. I went up to find him. He was so good, they had him checking the other prisoners in and out of the camp. And then they sent him home.
Wow.
Well, we left Oeffingen. Then they moved us up to Bad Wurishofen. We stayed there during the winter. It snowed about knee deep. And we had a headquarters. By that time, I was what's called S3 in charge of. We hauled coal and wood we had displaced persons from Estonia, Latvia, all those countries down there. They had slave labor, and we had to feed them and see if the hotels had heat. And I had the responsibility for that, and did that. Well, you had a point system. You got so many points for this and that and other. I had about 30. Well, these guys that had been in Panama, they had like 90. They went home right quick, so all those officers left. So they sent people back in for that. Well, they came along. They were having trouble down at Trieste at the Italian border. And so the battalion commander and went down there, left me and Gatzlik, who was personnel in charge. They filled us up with a lot of boys that went home, filled us up with a lot of Air Force people that had been and some of them never shot a rifle. We let them shoot a M1, we let them shoot a carbine, we let them shoot a machine gun, we let them throw a grenade. It gave us 10 days to have them ready to go to there. Well, it turned around and gave us 21 days. That time the battalion commander came back. So I went through a 21-day cycle. So my points finally came up. I went into Stuttgart got some socks. I could do anything. I got free of my job because they found me a replacement. And these company commanders They had gone home from, they was in U.S. #1 Division and fought through the whole war. They took a 45-day leave, went home, and came back and going to stay for regular Army. And they put them out there in the camp with us, intense, and they were mad. And I was a first lieutenant telling them what to do. But I got away with it. And the battalion commander was a good friend, so I just stayed on the staff for a long time doing nothing. And I went into Stuttgart one time. Then I went down to the Purchase Garden for one weekend. Went up to Hitler's nest.
So you got to see Hitler's
got
nest.
To see around. Then I had a trip to Switzerland for 2 weeks. And I saw my appointment was coming, and I canceled that where I could come home. So I went around and bid all the guys goodbye, and they put me on a train, went up to Bremerhaven, north, all the way up to Bremerhaven. We stayed there. There was a captain in the group, and I was the first lieutenant. They had a payroll. They called us and counted out about $30-something thousand back then, which would be about 20 to 30, it'd be 600,000 now. So the next, they gave us all a backup pistol to guard us. So at night we slept with these pistols to guard that money, because we had the next day had to distribute it. So they lined them up, and we went through the line. We got through. We lacked a little bit, so each one of us took some of our own money and finished paying them off. So then they put us on a Liberty ship at Bremerhaven. Holds about 6 or 7,000 people. So we went through the English Channel, crossed over. Took us about 7 days to come back. It took us 12 days to go on the big ship. Took us 7 days to come back and come into the Havre. And unboarded, went back to Camp Kilmer, stayed a while. Again, we got a pass, went into New York, and 3 or 4 of us went up to the big hotel there in Columbia, where they had a skylight roof with his own radio, whatnot. We had an old guy from Louisiana there, and the guy came around with tuxedos on and said, "What will y'all have?" He said, "What have you got?" He said, "Anything you want." This guy said, "Bring me a turnip green salad sandwich and a glass of cold well water." The guy liked to die. Well, we eat the cheapest thing on there was some fish. We thought it was real high. They cost us about $5 a piece. $530-something. We thought it was terrible how high it was.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, came back to Camp Kilmer. They sent us down to Fort Bragg. We stayed there about 6 or 7 days. And they released us, and they gave me enough money to go home. I caught a bus over to Charlotte. I caught a Charlotte bus. Another Clemson and I got on it. We drove all the way from Charlotte and went through all their little towns. I called home, and my dad met me at the station. My sisters came up from Fountain Inn, and I was back home. So that's a long story about it.
Well, I wanted to pull out this carbine because I'm assuming this is what you accidentally shot off when cleaning it.
This is what I carried.
Yeah.
I carried it. Yeah, I had it broken down cleaning it when I got called captain.
Yeah.
That's
a 1942 manufactured carbine. So
I didn't shoot it but one time. That was when I shot it up in there to check the safety.
That's great.
Somebody asked me if I killed somebody. I said, no, I never did shoot it one by. Mm-hmm. I'm sure my mortars and machine guns killed a good many. But as far as me shooting somebody, I didn't shoot anybody. Yeah. So the Bible says, do not kill. And that was on my mind. So I always said I didn't kill anybody.
Did you have any close
Well, some
calls?
of them carried an M1, but it was lots heavier. I like this one because it's lightweight.
Oh, yeah.
This weighed, I forgot, 6 or 7 pounds. Mm-hmm. Old M1, that other thing, it's heavy.
It's heavy.
And a lot of them carried it and heavy.
Yeah.
But this is big enough.
I
carried one of these. I had a gas mask, which we finally threw away. I had a gas mask, had a telephone, weighs about 3 or 4 pounds. You carried a telephone up here, and you carried a grenade or two on your lap. You had a medical thing here. You had a ditching shovel on one another shovel. So you're pretty loaded down. then you had a big heavy coat and your clothes on there. So you had a pretty good
Yeah.
load going along.
Did you have any close calls? Any time where artillery shell landed near? Or?
Not really. We had artillery a lot of times shooting over our heads. And then during the war, when they had a 1,000 plane raid, you could look up and see these planes in the morning going way up there about 30,000 feet. And later you'd see them come back straggling. Some of them shot up and whatnot. Then, like, we'd have artillery going over our head back and forth. But when was it? After we crossed the Danube River, Rhine River, the Germans had artillery on us, right next to us. It's shattered right here. I'm afraid they're going to say 1 mil right and get us. And I was looking where you could run, always going down the road with trees along the side. And there wasn't no place to hide. All you could do is have to take it. But finally, it got through, and it did it, and we caught, I think, some young Germans who was trying it, and they didn't know how to run it, and they did, so it missed us. But a lot of times, every time we jumped off, we'd have artillery going over our heads, back and forth. So,
Yeah.
but none ever hit me, thank goodness. So I didn't have any real close calls. I was one of the lucky ones.
Did you have any interactions with German civilians? Did you have any interactions with German civilians and German?
Oh yeah,
Germans?
we'd take over German houses at night. We'd make the men get gone. Sometimes we'd say, "Rouse my house, get them out of the house." But usually you went to the burgomaster, who was the mayor, and he would select the houses for us to take and to make the men get out. We'd let the women stay. And the women would cook for us. Like, we'd gather eggs during the day. We get there and they'd gather eggs. That old boy ate 12 fried eggs a day, and the woman, she got to die in the laughing. She was cooking, whatnot. One place, we'd been out overnight. We slept out in the rain and icy sickles down near the Alps all night. And we moved in this barn. There's a cow in it. I milked the cow. We killed a chicken. I skinned the chicken, parboiled the chicken, cut it up and fried it and made gravy, and milked the cow and got gravy, and got the flour from the woman and made gravy, and we ate chicken. And I wrote it home in a story down there and whatnot. And we take, and the boys in some of the houses, like in Beirut, my sergeant, he'd loot stuff. You go in and pick up beads. He have his pockets full of old beads and things that he collected.
Did you loot much? Did you bring anything back?
Huh?
Did you bring anything back?
Yeah, I
Did you
had
loot?
a few little watches downstairs that wouldn't work. You open from the bracket in the front. I gave most of them away. I had a Luger pistol and another little pistol. And the boys wanted them so bad after a while, I gave mine away to the sergeant, and I just gave my away. I did get a shotgun. Ken's got it now. It's made in, after the war, I had a friend, Price, he found 2 shotguns still in his Cosman lean and all, and I sent them home to my dad, and so I sent that home, and I still got a trunk downstairs, a little junk in it, but I collected. Everybody collected a little junk.
Oh yeah, well I'll show you, so this would have been your helmet.
Yeah, I wore one of those.
Yes, sir. That one has a bullet hole in it, so I don't know if, I don't think that happened to you.
No, that didn't happen. Thank goodness.
Thank goodness. Yes, sir.
Oh yeah.
Dang, I don't remember it being this heavy. It was heavy.
And then I know you remember this.
I got one of them downstairs.
Do you?
I got one downstairs.
That's neat.
Yeah. That thing was heavy. I don't really.
That's great.
Yeah, you don't realize how heavy it is.
Yeah, because it has the liner in it.
Yeah, that thing is heavy. You don't realize it's that heavy. You were carrying a lot of stuff.
Mm-hmm. That's right. I can take that.
Yeah,
And
I
then-
got a German helmet downstairs. Everybody wants to know where I got it. I said, I don't know where I got it.
Yeah, you don't remember. And then I don't know if you remember, this is a Hitler Youth knife.
Yeah, I probably seen some of these. Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
yeah. Yeah, everybody wanted a Luger pistol.
Yeah.
I had one, but I gave it away.
Where did you pick yours up?
I don't remember. See, you capture these people and you shake them down. Everybody go get them something.
Yeah.
Who's first? Like when we were in the woods and machine gunner opened up, and I carried my machine guns around and had them set up. And our gun shoots like 250. The Germans shot one at 1,200 meters. They said, brr, brr, and I was,
Yep.
well, I had machine guns shooting. He gave out ammunition, and I was trying to get him up position. I raised my head, and the bullets went over my head, cut the leaves down, and I dropped down again. I did it again, and he did it again. I knew best to don't keep your head up long. Well, we had this named Sire Marconi. He's from down in New Orleans there. He's an ammunition carrier. He carries a thing here, and he carries 3 mortar shells here, 3 mortar shells here, and ammunition box here, and his M1 around his neck. Well, he ran out of ammunition up here, and I was up front, and I said, look at me, throw the ammunition on up here. He started walking to me. I said, get down, you'll get shot, get down. Well, he turned around and gonna throw it to me. And he threw it and it fell down and hit his foot, and then everybody got to laughing. He got to jumping up. People get to laughing and things like that. Well, he finally got it. And in later years, I went out west. I was gonna go to Lafayette, and I looked him up, found his sister, and said he lived in Houston. And I was going to Houston the next day, and I called him from the hotel in Houston. He was about a block away. I invited he and his wife to come and take him out to dinner, because we used to have reunions. He came, and the first thing he said, I would shoot you, you like to got me killed. I said, I saved your life. He was dumb. He retired, he worked in Houston for 20 years as driving a cement truck. But he married a girl, and she'd been to community college. My wife, she painted some, you see on the walls here, and she had been taking painting too, so they got along. He married a girl that did pretty well. He did pretty well. We went out to eat, and I ate my lunch, he ate most of mine too. He could still eat.
So did you, I know your division captured some concentration camps. Did you go into
a place
any?
called Gunskirchen. Went through a place called Gunskirchen. As you got there, the guards had already run. And a lot of them had strayed out. You see them laying along the roadside with just a coat on. Some naked, some just plain bones, stench, all the way through. We didn't stay long because Patton says keep going. I went back, after I retired, went back, and there's a monument there, and I got a picture somewhere that I took to our division for removing that. Bob Berry, a guy from another company, was given I got a little booklet downstairs which mentions him. He had a company. His company was given the job of cleaning it up, whatnot. And it's called Gunskirchen. And I got a little pamphlet down there that reads about it.
But you saw the bodies, the emaciated
I saw
bodies.
all the dead bodies and all scattered around there.
Oh, man.
And also I went up and they had a place with a lot of guns and so forth.
Yeah.
In fact, I picked up a couple of Lugers I thought I'd get, but they told me to put them back because the bigger officers wanted to keep them.
That's right. Did you ever interact with any German planes? Did any German planes, Me-109s, ever strafe you?
Well, like it, one was going to cross the Danube. At night, we were in the woods going to cross on boats the next morning. At night, we call them Jerry's, little planes. They'd get up overhead trying to figure lights, see if they see light, they shoot artillery. And the boys, we make them, if they light the cigarette, they'd get under a coat, on the raincoat or something, and light them up to keep them down. So we'd always see a light. So we'd hear them most every night flying around seeing what they could see. So keep down to our trailer. And so the next morning we got out and got on boats and paddled across the other side.
Yeah.
Whatnot.
Did you ever face any German tanks, any Panzers?
Not. We saw mostly blown up tanks. See, once they broke through, their tanks couldn't keep up. They were shot up like I showed you at Masons. They'd lost all their artillery. It was pulled by horses and mules, and they couldn't keep up. And ours was pulled by trucks, so they got all shot up. So they lost the artillery, so they couldn't shoot at us except with a small arms fire. So when we for one little, see over there, you got a little community about every 1,000 yards with just a few houses here, and you go through one, and the boys would go through and pick up some eggs here, and they had a lot of rabbits. Everybody had a rabbit pen and a few chickens. We'd pick it up. So we weren't shot at. Most of them, what they would do, they'd back up on a hill, and they'd shoot, see, from way a distance, like 1,000 yards. They don't hit nothing. Well, then we'd set our mortars up and shoot mortars. And quick as the mortars hit, you'd see them scatter, because they were on the run most of the time during that part of the war, because they couldn't. They had already lost the big art. Probably up north they still had more artillery. Down there we didn't have it. We was moving pretty fast all the time. We'd move 10 or 12 miles every day, either walking or mostly walking. So I did mostly hiking, walking across.
Yeah.
One little village to the next. But every little village, sometimes they'd shoot us, and we'd shoot a mortar shell, and the burgomaster would come out with a flag, most all the time. If he didn't, you open fire.
Wow. What was it like to see Hitler's eagle's nest?
Huh?
Did you go up to Hitler's eagle's nest? What was it like?
This was after the war. I went down there. I went up, and we had jeeps, and we had some girls that was in nurses. They were there too on leave. So we piled on a jeep and went up, and you had to get on an elevator inside. We rode up there. Of course, it had been pretty well stripped of everything. So we walked around in there, and that's about all we did, see it. There's a fellow, my brother Zed, is classmates with James Ponder from Dacresville. You'll see every unit said they captured the eagle's nest. Well, see, everybody ends up in the same place. James Ponder got the radio from up there, over at Dacresville, where I live. And it was in the paper one day, his picture. I don't know what happened to it now, because I'm sure he's dead and his wife dead. Maybe I believe he had a son, probably he's got it. But he got the radio. Then some people got different stuff. I didn't pick up anything, whatnot. But a lot of people did that, and you'll see a lot of units said they captured it. But always people ended up scattered. See, you got armored division all mixed with the infantry divisions, going along the same roads, and you're like your regimental commanders and division commanders. They go in the main roads like the interstates and the big highways. You were out here 20 miles to the right, going along with them. That's the way it works. Occasionally we cross. One time we interstate. And as you captured people, like we'd be going like for every hour we'd take a 10-minute break. You had to relieve yourself. Well, the Germans were retreating. Oh, we captured them. We'd have a bunch of them. Well, when you stopped, you had to go to the restroom. You took your shovel, you went over and dug your little hole. You squatted down over your hole. Whatnot. A lot of the German prisoners had their wives and girlfriends with them. They would scatter out there too. They had to go to the bathroom too. They'd squat, and you see the women over there squat, because they followed their husbands into captivity. Some of them have girlfriends and their husbands and wives. You can see it, because they with them back in these other towns, see. So when they surrendered, they come with them. Whatnot. But we just sent them all back. So you you couldn't guard them. They just put them in the middle of the road and tell them to keep on going.
I've seen those big packs of prisoners walking in the middle of the road.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah,
Wait,
I've seen that.
Would you
Time
search
or two
them?
we got on trucks and went down the interstate. We'd see them coming down. And the interstate, they took out the middle and painted it green. And they had some of the planes backed off, used it as airport.
Did you see any the jet fighter? Did you see any German jets?
Toward the end of the war, I've read a lot of history since then. We heard a plane. We all fell on the ground like we're supposed to spread out. It was one of those jets. You hear it here, it's already over yonder. My guys took guns and started shooting. I'm sure they shot a mile behind it. And I looked up and one of my guys went down and stuck his head in a haystack like you can't see me. And I told him to get down on the ground. Then I read in history later, one of the guys was trying one out. And I'm sure that's what he was doing, because he was trying it out toward the end of the war. And it was like a week or two before the war was over. In one of the books I read, these guys, and I think he ended up being the head of the Air Force for the Germans after the war. But he was trying that jet out and whatnot. But all we could see, it was going over yonder.
Wow.
But I remember we hit the ground like we're supposed to, like that. But by that time we had our people that already shot most of them down, so you didn't have much trouble about it. I think maybe some northern area they had more problem, but we didn't have it. But that's the ones I saw.
Yeah. Well,
I jumped around. There's no way to tell everything.
No, I know. That's why I'm asking the questions.
Yeah, you asked the question.
When you came back from the war and you went back to Clemson.
Well, I saw us coming home, so I wrote my dad to get me back into Clemson. My dad wrote down here, and they told me they was already filled up. They couldn't take me. They'd taken a bunch of freshmen. My dad got mad and came down to see Dr. Poole. Told him it didn't make sense. The guy had been going 3 years, he couldn't finish in 1 year, and they had a freshman. So they took me in. So I came down. I got home like on June. I just left about June 16th, July. I got home like in September. I came down. I was still a captain in uniform. I didn't get out in the Army till about way up in September after I got enrolled. I came down and went into the YMCA, which was active then, and they used to send us paper every now and then from Y. We'd get a letter from Clemson. They'd send us letters. I'd get a letter maybe 2 during the time I was over there. And this fella, Goodale, big fella taught me daring. There was about 5 of us in the line. And he called a roll. He said, Jones, H-L, J-H-R, Jower, Howard N, Jones, joke, hey, he'd always do that. Well, I opened the door to the Y, and he always helped get that letter out to send us. I opened the door and he saw me. Joe K. Jones, welcome back. So he welcomed me back. And later, I didn't make too good of marks under him. But later I was county agent in Greenville, and he took a job, and he and I got to be good friends, and he recommended me for a job for working in a bank one time, whatnot. So I ended up being good friends with him.
That's great.
Big Ben Goodale. He's a big shot. He was in World War I as a sergeant, so he knew all about Army.
Wow.
But they call him Big Ben because he was like 6'4" and big fella. And he always talked big, like he called roll. He'd call that roll and have fun with it. Jones H.L., Jones Howard, Jones Joe K., Jones so.
Well, I heard that Clemson was really crazy when soldiers came back and went back to school that Clemson was a pretty wild campus atmosphere.
Well, they cut up on senior day then. I didn't do it. A lot of them. I know our senior day, well, they got some horses and rode them up over campus, rode them down through the halls. Then some of them put a sheep up in the tower where the clock is, or a calf or something like that. They did things like that. They finally cut it all out. Yeah, they used to do crazy things like that.
That's great. Well, Mr. Jones, anything else you want to share? Any other stories? Any other stories that you want to share from the war?
Well, you think of things later on.
Yeah.
It's hard to remember things. There's like my memory's getting where it's Russell. Like I go to church and people I sit with, I can't think of their names, and I sit with them all the time. In fact, I got now where I wrote all the names down. I carry it with me where people come up to me, I can remember the name. Like today, I'm trying to remember. I jot down this little paper there. So, help me remember. I got your name down here. See, trying.
All right.
I got out here Lahar, Bitch, Guns, Kirkin, Formation.
That's right.
Because the names sometimes won't come to you.
That's okay.
They don't come to you, and I'm getting worse every day.
Well, you did a great job. Thank you.
And yes, you think of it. I've written downstairs. I've got books. I bet I've read 20 or 30 Army World Tour books.
Wow.
I got a friend who was in the Air Force after the war, and he gets a lot of books, somewhere cheap books. He gets through and he brings them, and I read them. So I had a lot of books, and some of them I passed on. And I got them on Patton, on Eisenhower, all Winston Churchill. I need to get rid of them. I got to haul them somewhere. Some of them are probably on a keep, but they're all good books. And some downstairs there.
Yeah.
I'll show you later what all that. I got a trunk that went over Europe and back. I was packing officer. TAC means Teal Company Troops. My trunk went overseas, went with me to Bad Warfare, then shipped back. Surprisingly, I got it back home. And I got some of my old clothes I had. I got my top coat I wore, and I got my pants. I got my boots that strapped on back then. We didn't have them fancy boots. We had old boots that hold water. We had what we called dub we'd put on them to try to keep out. Later they issued better boots than we had at our time. Ours wouldn't. I'd have to tell you, the guy at Clemson is a professor, English professor. He's more interested in World War II than I was teaching. He interviewed me and wrote a book and got my name in it. I used to play tennis with him and golf. He played with him. He's retired now. He comes by here about every month, whatnot. He wrote a book and he's got me in it. Well, it one here about a year ago. He said, "Joe, how often did y'all change your underwear?" I got to thinking about it. I said, well, the boys were washing their clothes after the war's over, maybe a month or 2 months. Oh, you carried a toothpaste and you carried your razor and maybe some socks. You couldn't carry it on your back. Like you couldn't keep your letters, you had to throw them away. My wife wrote me quite often. I got a lot of letters, but I couldn't keep them. I had to destroy them. But so there's another guy that was in the Army at the golf course. So in his presence, I said, "How often do you change your underwear?" He said, "What?"
That's great.
So you don't remember. It was OD and you wore it. I remember one time they set up showers, and I got to change clothes and get in a shower. They give you about a minute to go in there, and the engineers set up showers with tents over it, and you go in on some boards. You give you about a minute to shower and come out and change clothes one time. I remember that one time. Rest of the time you washed in your helmet.
Yep.
I got a picture somewhere downstairs of me washing me. I had a helmet full of water, and you start washing your face and you work way you down.
Yeah. You take out the liner, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I got one. You put it right there. You get your little cold water, not hot water, but cold water. You wash it, then you wash your feet.
Yep. That's great. Well, thank you.
I washed in. That's why you shave. That's the way you shave.
Yeah.
But see, we got like I saw a guy at a reunion. He said he was on the front lines 300 and something days or something like that.
Oh.
Well, if he's been on the front lines, see back there where they have artillery, they back 3 or 4 miles. And they got tents set up and they get hot meals all the time. We hardly ever got a hot meal. They'd issue us C rations or K rations. K rations, a little box like this, and you had a little tin in there with something like, I guess, eggs and stuff all frozen that you eat. Sometimes you could heat it up, maybe do it. Lunchtime, you have a piece of chocolate about that big and about that thick you ate, or you had a chunk of cheese about that thick that they ate. C rations, you get rations, you have like butter beans, hot, which I couldn't stand, and hash, different things. And certain things are a whole lot better than others. Like I said, when we first got up there, they had a pile of stuff and we could pick out what we wanted. But when you got out by yourself, they just give you 3 cans or something, one for breakfast, one for noon, one for supper. And you carry it in your little pack up there. And same way with key rations, they had a box about like that, but you couldn't carry too many of them. They're heavy after a while.
What was your favorite meal?
Well, you couldn't say any of them were favorite.
They were all pretty bad?
Yeah, all pretty bad. It's the existence.
Yeah.
I had, what I didn't like was butter beans that's too salty. I'll tell you part of it in front of her. It was cold, like in October or something, real cold. We've been moving. We stopped for lunch. The only thing I had was a can of butter beans, which is always too salty. I ate those butter beans. I think I heated them up a little bit. And of course, they upset me. We started going, the GIs hit me. I couldn't take another step before another one. We were going to cross a river, and they'd blown the bridge, and they found a concrete dam. We had tanks, half tracks, and all following along with us. I got where I couldn't take another walk. I saw an outside Johnny over here. I told the sergeant that I was going to the Johnny. For him to take over, I'd catch up as soon as I could. Went over, the door was locked. I bammed it on my rifle. Joust, rouse, rouse. The old German come running out. So I took it over and relieved myself. Stayed a good while. Well, I finally got out. I had to catch up. They break ever so I got in the middle of the column walking. They took a break, I kept walking. This was like right after lunch. At 6 o'clock, I caught up with my crowd in front. First thing I did, I found another toilet. It was one of these that you go in and you water's up here and you pull a road and washes down. We stayed there overnight and I finally got over my problem. But that's what they call the screaming GIs. I had it.
That's why you didn't like those butter
Well,
beans.
my friends over there laughed, said all I did was capture an outhouse.
Yep, with your rifle.
They call it, I captured an outhouse. So I did capture an outhouse.
You did something, yeah.
There's an old German in there. He is scared to death because we had half tracks crossing that dam, little narrow dam, and that's easy to cross this dam. And trucks and half track, a few tanks, whatever was with us, whole battalion, see, whatnot. And some of our guns, because you had guns attached to us, artillery going across that bridge. So I captured the outhouse.
That's awesome. Well, thank you.
But you remember the funny things.
Oh yeah, of course.
And actually, a lot of times you're shooting people there. Another time, it's in cold morning, and the Germans were on a hill about 1,000 yards away, and they shot at us they couldn't hit us with it. Anyway, they shot at us. So we set up the machine guns and mortars, my company did. And I was just walking around there. Well, out of call to nature. In the morning. Well, there's a barn down kind of out to the front. I told the sergeant that I was going to go down and look in that barn and see if it was. I'd go in that barn. So I went up and the window was up like this. I got up and pulled myself up and looked in there. Didn't see anybody Germans in there. So I jumped through the window, went in there and relieved myself. Came back through the window. They're still shooting back. I came back and joined them. And so they laughed about it, but that's the way you had to do. I didn't want to open up down. I had no wide open spaces by myself. Somebody shooting at us.
That's right. That's great.
But things like that happen. Like the boys have to go to the bathroom. You had to go when you go dig a hole if you could. That's because we get them. If you didn't dig a hole, you raise Cain with them because people had to walk around, too many troops, so you had to do it. But I was always amazed about the girls, how they'd handle it. They knew how to drop the dress and hide. I know after a war, we was going around and had a lake and people were swimming. I drove up and stopped, and the girls would come in there with their bathing suits in their hand. They just stand there and start dressing and put the bathing suit on while everybody watches them. And they got ready to redress. They do the same way. They put up this dress. They take this down. They dress right on the bank of the river.
I'm sure the guys enjoyed that.
I wrote about it. I wrote about it at home. I couldn't believe how they did. She knew how to do it, wouldn't you? You don't know how to do it?
Yeah.
They knew how to do it.
Oh yeah, to change clothes without anything
Yeah,
showing.
they know how to do it. Yeah, they do it. They'd come to the lake.
Yeah.
All of them bring their bathing suit with them, and you get there, and they'd put their bathing suit on the bank of the river. They'd pull it up, I guess, pull the panties down, they'd pull that up,
Mm-hmm.
then they'd take off something, you'd
Put
see them do
something
something like this up underneath, they'd take this off,
Yeah.
then they'd do it right. It was new to me to see it. I wrote home about it because I sat there and watched them. Another thing they do, when they got through, they'd pick up all the trash. They were clean people. Germans were clean. They'd pick up everything. We stayed in some French homes, and they weren't near us. They sell milky cows. The Germans' homes were a whole lot cleaner and deeper. Whatnot. Because we stayed in a lot of, when we got in Germany, we'd take over a lot of the houses. Like one night, we'd been out all day in rain and cold, and they got to this little village. They told us we had some houses. They said, don't bed down, we might move out any minute. We were with Patton, see. Well, I had a mortar section. I had telephones. I could run a wire up to the top of the hill and run it back to the mortars. So I told them I was going to be this. So I told one of my boys to go to headquarters. We ran a wire back down to company, to me. And I told Sir Marconi, he's one of my dumb runners. If they were dumb, you'd make a runner out of them. I said, you stay here. If they say we're going to move, you call me, and we'll miss company and battalion both. We'll be ahead of them. We'll get ready to go. So the sergeant and I went in and had a fire We got on a feather bed on top of it with the guns with us, and the boys took the packs down and stretched out sleeping. About 2 o'clock in the morning, Sergeant McConnell came in. Lieutenant, shake up. Well, I knew we had to move, so I jumped straight up. What? They said to put the people down, go to sleep. We wouldn't move out till 7 o'clock. Well, Sergeant Jackson got up, excuse me. He said, "You dumb SOB." Said, "I'm good man to shoot you, you dumb." I said, "I'll leave him alone." Said, "He did what I told him." He did what I told him, but he was dumb, but he didn't know better. So they went back to sleep. But his name was Simon McConaughey. He's from up in New Jersey. He probably spent about the 3rd grade and whatnot.
Oh,
see, but they made them runners, but he carried stuff. But like if you need a telephone, you could run to headquarters back and forth. You had a couple of runners, and he was one of them. I had 2 of them. But I put one up there and on the telephone, one down here. Mm-hmm. But that happened one night, and I always, as I say, a lot of funny things happen.
Oh yeah. What you've mentioned your mortars a few times. Did you have? I said you've mentioned your mortars a few times. Did you have 60 millimeter and 81 millimeter?
60 millimeters. They're about that big around.
Yeah.
Drop about. I believe things weighed about 3 pounds. Heavy mortars, see, stand up about this way. I had 3 of them. So you'd scatter them out here, and you'd put a guy up on the hill here. He observing. We'd shoot 1 round, and you, based on that, you know about what we say, so many meters right or so much meters left. Then when you shoot 1 more, if it hit good, then you say, "Fire away." Then all 3 of them would shoot.
Okay. That
way you get. They'd shoot 3, 3, 6. They give 9. They do that. And of course, when you did that, you see the Germans take off. Quick as those mortars start shooting, they get out because they can't stand that.
Yeah.
Then you got heavy weapon mortars. Like we was at Amberg. We were firing there. My friend Charbonneau, he was company commander. His guys attacked. He got about, and I was in the company right next to him. He and I were good friends. And they told me he got shot in the foot. And so I walked over there, and we were both sitting back where the mortars were. And he was in the Jeep with his foot all wrapped up. He got shot in the foot. He had 6 or 8 killed and 12 or 13 injured. Our company was beside him. We didn't have any injuries. But his one, I think they made a mistake. They was trying to charge the thing. If they'd waited a while, the Germans would give up. But some of them go ahead and want to go charging up the hill, whatnot. Later, he called me and said that some sergeants thought he ought to get a Silver Star, and they wanted him to confirm that he saw it. And I said, "Did you see it?" He said, "No." I said, "You can't confirm something you didn't see." So I guess the guy didn't. He thought he ought to get a Silver Star for what he did. Well, I have to tell you about him. As I told you, he was a Catholic. After the war, I was going up that way on a visit, and I thought I'd meet him. I called him on the telephone. Of course, he said, "Joe, you get married?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "You get married?" "Yeah." He said, How many children you got?" And I told him I had 3. I said, "How many you got?" He said, 14. I said, "What?" He said, "Let me explain." He said, "My wife had 6, and she died, and said I married Jane, and she's got 8. And so he had 14 children.
Oh, gosh.
And so I wanted to meet him at the hotel up there, and he couldn't find a babysitter, his babysitter. First he said he couldn't come meet with us, and finally said he found a babysitter. He and his wife came to see us. So we talked. Then another time I met him, we had a reunion at West Point, and he came at that West Point. But he said, I think they kept him broke. Said he, money-wise, he couldn't go to reunions. That's the only 2 he came to. But we kept in touch. He finally moved to Florida. His wife's mother moved down there. He moved to Florida in a place there. And I was on a trip one time, and I called him, and I met him down there, and we talked. And of course, he still had a bunch of kids, some of them up there and some down, none there. But he was a good guy. He ended up being like the head of Boy Scouts in New Hampshire.
Wow.
He could climb a rope just like this. He's very athletic.
Yeah.
But we were real close. And at Fort Benning, he had a car. I was a second lieutenant captain. He and I ran together, and he had a girlfriend there. And I had a picture of her when he showed his new wife, his girlfriend. She was a Methodist, and they find somebody for me. And back then things were cheap. Before we went out, we said, well, what are we going to spend? We're going to get a Coke and pack a cracker 11 cents. I said, I'm not going to spend any money on somebody I don't know.
Good point.
Occasionally we buy them a hamburger, but most of the time we'd go get back then you didn't have out places to eat. You always had to go to a drugstore to get a milkshake, whatnot. So, but he and I traveled together like that all the time. He was a captain, I was a company. Yeah, why was it Columbus? I got Phoenix City was right across Columbus.
That's right.
Had a river. You walk over in Phoenix City. It was full of tents and things for entertainment for soldiers, dance halls and all like that. Every night somebody was getting shot or something or other. Well, they called me about 1st of October. They give you one sergeant in a Jeep, and they give you a pistol. On this side, they had a place to drink milkshake. Well, we'd drink a milkshake and then get on the Jeep. We have to go in these places one after the other, checking. Some of them had back rooms and all like that. And I didn't, found out I was out of uniform. I was supposed to switch some other wool uniforms, and I still had on the other uniform. Anyway, I didn't arrest anybody. So when I turned it in, they said, "You're the first fellow that ever didn't arrest anybody." Because I knew if I did, I'd be. But they had all kind of gambling going on. Later on, they raided the place. The government did and shut it all down.
Wow.
But people used to go over. We used to go over there and have little dance halls and take our girls over there and dance over there. And you have a dance floor about as big as this room, and it'd be everybody standing up like that. You could learn to dance. Oh, you couldn't move.
That's great.
And I didn't drink beer or wine. Most of them drank beer. And Sharper and I, we'd order milk, and people kid us about drinking milk at our table. We had more fun with them laughing, picking us about drinking milk at the table. We'd be drinking milk while they was drinking beer and getting drunk. But it was a notorious. And you go over there in a little place where we get chicken. We eat chicken. And the story was that when Mamie Eisenhower came down to visit her son and us at Christmas, we'd have parties at Patton's headquarters. We had a place or a pool and whatnot, and we'd have big parties at January 1st and all that. And they'd always dock us all like $20 for everybody. Make us second lieutenants pay the same as the colonels. Well, Mamie came down to visit him, and she stayed in general's quarters. And she would come down to eat with us. These colonels when we had a party, wanted to eat at the head table. She said, "No, I'm going to sit down here with John and his friends."
That's awesome.
So she sat with us at the table down here, whatnot. And they'd come over to the table, and she'd laugh about them wanting a date with her. Well, we were dancing with her down here. But she's kind of a sport. She'd laugh about them coming up. She was been around all these old soldiers. All of them wanting to dance with Mamie.
Oh, yeah.
Wandered at the head table, and she wouldn't sit with us. Then she'd come down to the company and eat with us. She'd stay for 2 or 3 weeks and then go home. Whatnot.
That's really neat. That's neat.
So I met Mamie. She is a character because she'd been around the army for 30 years.
Oh, yeah.
She knew all about those things then.
Well, Mr. Joe, I appreciate it. Thank you for sharing everything you've shared.
Well, it's a lot of junk you'll remember. Yeah, I'll remember. It's hard to remember everything. Whatnot.